Matt and Sebas next.
Hey. Especially share screen.
Hello. Yeah, sharing the screen.
Cool. Hey everybody. Thanks, Maxi, and thanks to everyone for being here. We're super excited to be here. What we're talking about today is no code in real life and how we as a no code agency like AirDev see products in our day-to-day life and what we're building. My name is Matt Varughese. I am the CEO of 8020.
And my name is Sebastián, and I'm head of operations at 8020.
And 8020, if you're wondering, is a no-code product studio in the Tiny Capital family. If you don't know Tiny Capital, it is a $1 billion holding company in Victoria, Canada, and it holds a lot of brands that you might know, like Girl Boss or We Work Remotely, Dribbble. They even bought AeroPress, the huge coffee company, a couple of weeks ago. We also have siblings that probably have designed and developed products that you know today, like Slack, Coinbase, Uber Eats, things like that. And throughout the course of the last 2.5 years or so, we've been really lucky to be able to work with a lot of startups all along the spectrum, from the bootstrap founder that needs to build an MVP all the way up to like a $1 billion company or publicly traded companies. And so you might be wondering why 80/20 at the end of the day. And we've heard it a lot, but like this is the future. And for us, when we talk to clients, the big reason for 80/20 is it's custom software in a fraction of the time without retainers. Because at the end of the day, to us, building in no code allows people to own their stack, and they don't need to rely on an engineering team or a product team or even an agency to make changes down the road. They can fully own that and maintain it themselves. So with our stack, what we're using the most is a lot of what you see on the screen, but largely the first column. So for us at 8020, we're one of only 21 Webflow enterprise partners. And so we're working with a lot of enterprise clients looking to move their marketing site and landing pages, things like that. They want to move faster without code. And so they'll come to us. We're also building in tools like Bubble and Glide and Nadalo and things like that. But, the folks over at AirDev and Minimum, there's a lot of great Bubble builders. But for us, we're largely building in Webflow and then using a lot of these automation tools to kind of take these products to the next step.
Yeah, and so as we've heard from the other speakers, no code has a lot of use cases, but people come to us for two prominent use cases. The first one is marketing teams want to own their stack without having to rely on their engineering or product teams. Instead of the old way where the CMO or the marketing team would have to go through an engineering team and through a product team to build any kind of requirements they have on a day-to-day basis, the new way with no code is the marketing team is able to own their own product and do changes on the fly. So anyone from the CMO to the marketing intern can jump into Webflow or Bubble or any kind of tool and edit their thing and have it done in a week instead of having to wait several weeks to see the changes be live. A good example of this is one of our earlier customers, Rapbook, who is a film payroll company. So essentially what they did is bring technology to an industry that was still working with fax machines. And their website was originally built with Jekyll. So they liked it, but they find it very hard to scale. And they were trying to move fast because they were about to raise their Series A. So what we did is we helped them migrate to Webflow. And to this date, it has been one of our biggest projects ever. We helped them move from Jekyll to Webflow. Now their engineering and product teams can focus on their own tasks. And something important to note here is that in the end, engineering teams don't want to be working in their marketing sites. They want to be working on the cool stuff. As we've heard before in this talk, they want to be working in things that are innovative and no one is doing. So this empowers them to do that. And also, the marketing team can do changes on their own. So with every feature they launch, they're able to jump in and communicate it to their clients the very next day. So yeah, this made their lives a lot easier. And a couple of weeks back, Rapbook announced a new series that valued them at 1 billion. So we're very happy with them. And this goes to show that no code is for all kinds of companies, from scrappy startups to multi-billion-dollar companies. Yeah.
So the other use case that we see most prominently, and like we said earlier, these are our two main ones, but like there's clearly lots of use cases for no code, but this is the other one we see. It helps startups and individuals ship ideas on a time crunch. And so one perfect example of that was one of our earlier clients, Chance the Rapper. And one of the things that he was talking about, or one of the things that he had built, was this platform called Rapper Radio, which in essence was this really heavily custom coded app. It was done through traditional engineering that allowed fans of independent artists to boost their favorite radios and get them on radio stations to help them get traction and become big names. The problem was they reached out to us to rebuild the app because it wasn't scalable. It didn't really work for them at the time, adding new artists and adding new radio stations, things like that. It was just kind of a mess. The issue with rebuilding it, and the reason traditional agencies said no, is that there was a 3-week timeline to build it because it had to correlate to his album release a couple of years ago. And so what we did is we pretty much brought it to life, and we kind of pushed Webflow to the edges, and we built a web app in Webflow. And so essentially at the end of the day, we moved from this custom coded solution that required an agency to be on retainer to make changes to now, at the time, his management team could add artists, add radio stations, add tracks, all of that stuff, and maintain it on their own. And we did it in a time where we could catch a large wave of press from Billboard and other music, publications and things like that. And it ended up working out for his album release. And yeah, ultimately, this is the future that we believe in. Enterprises and startups will now be able to fully own their stack from end to end, and they'll be able to move faster without it. I think it's important to note, like, as the others have said, there's a place for traditional software development. And like, as David said, like, traditional software developers are going nowhere. I think there's a point at which you grow out of no code. But I think, kind of like Vlad was saying, that point is getting further and further away. You can actually stay on no code and build actual real products and solutions for companies or for yourself in no code, and it'll last a while. And so, yeah, that's those are the two main use cases that we see. And we want to leave time for questions if there are any.
Thanks, Sebas. Do we have any questions here? I actually have a question. You guys are like no-code superpower users. You probably tried out a bunch of tools. Matt also has a really cool podcast called Visual Dev FM. Highly recommend it. My question is, there's so many different no-code tools being created now. There's probably like, I don't know, maybe more than 500. I have a list, whatever. How do you think about which are the ones that are going to stick, right? Because in the end, maybe you have 80 tools trying to help you create apps or whatever. Which are the ones that are going to stick 5 years from now? What's going to happen?
Yeah, we get a lot of questions, or we get a lot of people emailing us and being like, hey, we have this new product, and do you want to try it out? And we'll almost always say yes, and we will try something out. I think that the test for us is, can we reliably build on this platform, and also will it be here in 5 years? And so a lot, like, especially if we're working with these like larger enterprise companies, they're not willing to a lot of times go with these bootstrap startups that are building no code tools, even if they're cool, because if they're coming to us and they're like, hey, we need this done, I don't want to give someone a solution that's literally going to go out of business in a few years. So I look at established companies like Bubble, like Glide, like Webflow. And, all of these companies have enterprise plans. They've raised funding. And so to me, it's not a, any business can go out of business at any time, but it's a more reliable metric. And so to me, it's like what will stand the test of time. And that's how we decide what tools we're using. But like you said, there's so many coming. A lot of them are spreadsheet driven. A lot of them are helping you build a new website. But to me, it's largely like, what do we feel comfortable telling a client to build on? And would we build that for ourselves if we were in the position of owning their company?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just to add on that, yeah, we see a ton of churn in no-code tools. It's quite easy to make something that like looks like a no-code app builder or something, and it's a deeply difficult problem. We always joke like Glide is 1% complete. Like Glide is one of the most complete no-code solutions, and we know it is like just the tip of the iceberg. We consider Bubble to be the most complete one, and I mean they've just been working on that for a decade basically. So one good heuristic to look for is like community and user generated content. And I'm not just saying that because Glide has that, we checked that box, but if there's like an active community of people building for different use cases and starting to build their own businesses on top of that tool. I know, Webflow has hundreds of people running their own agencies and consultancies, just like 80/20 on top of that tool. Glide has that. That's a really good signal that that's becoming kind of a platform that's here to stay. Don't be fooled by really shiny new landing pages trumpeting a new no-code tool if there's no like community there and no momentum. Super easy to make.
I was gonna add to that's one important thing, that when you are recommending a new tool, you want to make sure that whoever is owning it is going to be able to ask questions about it to someone else other than you, because if they're not able to, you're gonna have them there forever. So having a community and having a place like Webflow University or ClickUp University or all these great pages with documentation about the tool is a great thing to look at before proposing something.
Thank you. We have a question there. Yep.
So do you have any use cases where you start off with this no-code platform, and then the company increases or becomes large and complex, and now they need a bit more customization, and they need to control and they need to expand on it? So do they transition from this no-code environment to, on a parallel node, build their own kind of software?
Yeah, I think it depends. So one of the interesting things that we see is when these companies become larger and larger, they start to hire on like a head of security. And like sometimes, unless it's a tool like Glide or Bubble or Webflow, like a lot of these tools can't meet the security requirements of these larger companies. And so in those cases, we have seen some conversations. We have not had a client move off of a no-code solution yet, but it does become a little bit more complex in those circumstances if we're not building with a tool that has some sort of enterprise offering that can meet the pretty rigid security and legal requirements of the client. But it's rarely for a performance perspective or a feature perspective that they're considering it, at least from what we've seen right now.
I would add there that we have seen some clients that throw more and more custom code into their apps. But even then, it's just a fraction of the code you would need to use to replicate the full functionality of the app. So even if they're going that way, they prefer staying in the no-code space before doing that next step that is getting out of no-code.
Maybe we have time for one more, if there's any. Otherwise, I think we have Toby up next. Thank you, Sebas. Thank you, Matt.